尊敬的战友们好，今天是4月6号，星期六，文贵非常荣幸的在这里呢，与班农先生给大家直播啊，大家好，班农先生。
Good morning. Today is April 6th and Saturday. I'm very happy to be here broadcasting together with Mr. Bannon. Good morning to everyone.
Greatly honored to be here, Miles, and I'm so glad we started with President Lincoln because I have not had the chance to see you for over a month or so, but now that I see you, you've taken on the characteristics of our most famous president.
Sorry. 猫见面了，我没有看到那猫是1个月的时间，我很吃惊，看到猫的时候，好像是看到林肯总统一样的。
这个坦白的讲呢，昨天这个我和班农先生在过去的1个月呢，我们俩连个电话都没通。后来我们在几天前我们俩见了面，见完面以后呢，我就马上就去了这个加州，科里罗拉州。当时呢，我还这个上面还都有胡子的时候，班农先生呢，希望我留胡子啊。我很喜欢他的胡子，我也希望他留着。但是呢，昨天晚上在直播的之前，我收到了一个老领导，他说你阿姨有一个建议，能否让他高兴？你把胡子上面那个给刮了，单填胡。因为我们汉人是没有中间不长胡子的，很少。因为我叔叔就羡慕我这个胡子啊。结果我说是不是你妒忌呀？他说你阿姨让你理了，我回去就拿个推子啊，就往下理一理，嘟，也给理过了。我算了吧，我就都给理了，我摆这儿，结果理了。今天班农先生他也喜欢，所以这就是班农先生，永远鼓励别人，永远看到别人最好的，这就是我感激的。
So in fact that I haven't seen Mr. Bannon for like a month now, and then only even no phone calls, and only 2 days ago we met again, and then after that then we went to California together, and then he said that he loved my beard. Now, but the thing is that last night I received a phone call from my aunt. My aunt said that my uncle actually very envious about my moustache, and the thing is that, but the thing is that perhaps that I should actually take off my moustache because a lot of Han people they won't have the moustache. They only have the beard in the chin, so that is why that I shave off my moustache. And then Mr. Bannon also said this morning that he loves my look, and he in fact compare it with Mr. Lincoln. So that is why I love him. He always see the positive side of people.
Thank you, sir. 这个过去的1个月发生了很多事情啊，这个大家也都知道，特别是中美之间国际大事情啊。班农先生呢，这个去日本演讲、欧洲演讲啊。在这个中间，在日本的时候是这个我家里发生了不幸的事情。班农先生非常重感情的在日本说，为什么我今天穿一身黑衣服，是因为文贵的母亲。在这个欧洲的时候一直在关心着我，经常打电话给，因为我电话给燕平拿着了，他就给燕平问候。所以说在班农先生身上更看到了说，不是说中国人只有中国人有情感、有关心、有问候、有温暖，不是的。在班农先生看到了人的个性、热情、真诚和感情都是一样的，这就是我们看到班农先生的。他有长发，咱没有，那漂亮的浪发，咱拿胡子补，所以说现在也跟他搞平衡。
Okay, so that the thing is that last month that a lot of things happened internationally, and while Mr. Bannon visiting Japan, and also that he visited Europe, while that he was Japan, something happened to me, and my mother passed away, and that is why that when he called me in Japan, that he saw that I was wearing black, and he asked me what happened, and I told him, and then so that he was very concerned, he was very sad together with me, and while that he was in Europe, then he was calling me constantly. However, because my phone, I was in mourning, so my phone was given to Yvette, so he kept on asking Yvette how I was. So from Mr. Bannon, I can feel that the concern that he actually had for me, and the warmth and the passion and the filial feeling that he had, just like that we Chinese the same thing. And so that from him, I can see all of that authentic feeling. And then also, of course, I admire his long hair, and now that he admires my beard, so we are now equal.
Thank you, sir. 那么今天很荣幸的跟班农先生又在一起，这个我们上这个节目。本来班农先生他是这个有其他安排，结果一说今天有直播，他说 Miles 我要参与啊，我要参加，因为有很多事情需要谈。这就是班农先生他这个人啊。昨天是日本富士电视台 富士电视台采访的，来了好多人啊。这个，但是呢，昨天采访完以后，就是说他一定要参加这个直播，要跟咱们的观众们尽快的见面，这让我非常的感动啊。
And also that today we're broadcasting together with Mr. Bannon. You know, the thing is that yesterday that Mr. Bannon was very busy. He was interviewed by the Fuji Broadcasting Television channel, and but then upon hearing that we're going to broadcast today, then he said perhaps that he can join us together because we have so many things to report to our audience.
那么我们过去直播从来没有准备的啊，就是在准备前天说今天直播的时候，班农先生问我们谈什么。我就顺口啊，就在这个翻译奶奶的面前，我就说了6个问题。我说谈这个问题吧，我们今天就从这个先谈起。
And then also that, you know, every time that we broadcast, we really did not do a lot of lengthy preparation. Only 2 days ago when Mr. Bannon and I met and we were talking about what are we going to talk about during our broadcasting, we said, how about that we report on 6 significant issues. And so that is why that today we'll start from that.
我们先谈第一个问题，就是当前美国刚刚的重启了，叫当前危机委员会。这当前危机委员会的主席呢是这个甘乃迪先生啊。甘乃迪先生是这个也是我和班农先生的好朋友啊，我们多次见面。然后另外一个叫 Frank 是副主席啊，也是过去在对苏联时期的时候啊，解体苏联一个最重要的功臣之一，原美国国防部的人。那么班农先生跟我认识最早就是提出，在2年前就是说见面，就是要商量怎么重启这个当前危机委员会的事情。当前危机委员会呢，我因此也学了很多吧，这2年来一直在探讨。那么我们今天就当前危机委员会呢，在国际上引起的反响和它本身的意义，和它的架构和是怎么回事儿，请班农先生给我们大家来说一说，我们学习学习。特别是这个大家关心的当前委员会里边都知道有个秘密委员会，有个执行委员会是不在名单的，第3个公开的是一个董事委员会。那么这几个委员会和它的机构，它都有什么样的分工，有什么样的作用？然后我们请班农先生给我们大家解答一下，谢谢。
So that you know that the first matter that we should explore is that recently we hear there is this revival of the Committee of Present Danger. Now that this committee was chaired by a Mr. Brian Kennedy and the deputy chairman is Frank Gaffney, and who was the assistant of Minister of the Minister of Defense, and who is also critical to taking down the Russian Soviet Union regime. And so that today, in fact, that the last 2 years we were constantly exploring the revival of this committee, and then I have spent the last 2 years learning a lot about this committee. So today we will ask Mr. Bannon to give us a detailed illustration about the purpose of the revival of this committee, the structure of it, and then the function of the Privy Council, the Executive Council, and also the board of it.
Thank you, sir, please.
So the Committee on the Present Danger is very famous in American political history. There have been really 3. We are the 4th version of this.
那么其实呢，这个党委会呢，就是当前这危机委员会呢，其实是在美国是一个非常著名的，而且是政治上非常有重大意义的一个的委员会。我们今天所谈的这个的党委会呢，已经是第4次的重启的一个的版本。
The first committee was in the 1950s, and it was to alert the American people to the significance of the Soviet Union's nuclear strike force. In the 1950s, people they didn't really understand how the Soviet Union had gotten so much rocket technology and how much nuclear technology they had. So the first Committee on the Present Danger was to alert people to this possibility of nuclear annihilation.
那么其实呢，这个党委会呢，一开始的时候呢，是在1950年的时候建立的。那个的时候呢，主要它的目的呢是要让美国的国民有一个的警觉性， 让大家都是知道呢，这个的苏联在那个的核武上，以及是在火箭上，他们的技术对于美国国民带来的一些的威胁。
One of the outcomes of that committee, and it's not what they intended, but it got the American people thinking. And in 1960, a very young senator from Massachusetts ran for president against the sitting vice president. Sitting vice president was Richard Nixon. The young senator was Jack Kennedy. And Kennedy used as one of his themes this missile gap. There was a missile gap between the Soviet Union and between the United States.
那么呢，在1950年的时候呢，它只是一个的存在了一个的教育的一种的一个的意义，直到呢是1960年的时候，那么当时呢有一个的麻省的一个的市长，就是说是这个的 Jack Kennedy 先生，他当时呢要竞选这个的总统，他是要面对着尼克逊总统的来的一个进行一个的竞选，当时呢他就是学习到有这个的委员会，而且呢就是使用这个的委员会来到呢告诉美国的国民，其实呢我们跟这个的苏联来说相对比，我们是存在着一段的一个的距离，就是说是在核武啊，还有是在我们的这个的火箭的基础上是存在了一些的一个的差距的。
The Kennedy administration is very famous for what is called the Cuban Missile Crisis. And in there, the Khrushchev and the Soviets, sensing weakness by a young senator, tried to install nuclear missiles into Cuba to be able to launch onto the United States. President Kennedy, even as a young man, stood strong against them. The Russians blinked, and then Khrushchev was removed from office.
那么然后的话呢，当时呢，你知道苏联的话呢，也觉得现在有一个的年轻人来到竞选这个的总统，他可在他当选了总统以后，他觉得其实他那么年轻，对于美国来说可能是出现了一个的脆弱的一个的时机，所以呢，他当时来到呢，就是让苏联利用了一个的机会来到呢，建立了很多的核武器，然后呢，特别呢是在这个的古巴的地方呢，可能要建立一些的火箭，可能对准着美国，可以呢就随时的可以发出这个的攻击。那么但是呢，其实当时甘乃迪呢也是非常的强硬，而且呢当时也就是使用了这个的单委会一些的信息，帮助了他学习到这个的苏联带来的一个的威胁，他也是强硬的站在这个的核武上，所以呢也是解除了当时的一个的核武带来的一个危机。
The second iteration of this came after the Vietnam War. And what some strategists said is that we had spent so much time focused on the Vietnam War, we had taken our eyes off of the real enemy we had, and that was the Soviet Union in their continual buildup of nuclear weapons.
然后呢，第二次呢，这个的单委会的重要性呢，是出现是在越战之后的，因为当时呢，很多的人觉得在越战的时候呢，太多的这个的焦点就是放在越战的时候，越南啊这一些的亚洲地区，我们当时呢就是忽略了，其实呀，苏联在那个的时候呢，正值是于我们这一个的战争的时期，然后呢就是强化他们自己的核武，所以呢，我们又再一次的通过这一个的单委会，一些的信息。来到呢，重新把我们的焦点放在这个的苏联上的。
And what these strategists and what these prominent people said, who are both Republicans and Democrats, they said that this time it was President Nixon, he was president by this time, and Henry Kissinger were saying that the Russians were so big and so powerful that we should reach some sort of accommodation with them. We should have détente. We should have the strategic arms limitation talks. We should have a rapprochement. We should basically make ourselves comfortable that the Soviet Union was going to dominate the world, but the United States could get along with them.
那么当时呢，然后呢，在那个的时候呢，是一个的尼克逊总统的一个的时期，然后呢，还有这个的基辛格先生。那么当时呢，他们就觉得，苏联呢，在我们在这个的时候呢，已经是在核武器上啊，各种各样的技术上呢，已经是变得非常的强大。所以的话呢，他们觉得在那个的时候，武器上，俄罗斯是主宰着这个的统治着这个的整个的全球的，所以我们应该呢，跟他有一个的 核战这个的停战，还有是和平的一个的协议，还有呢战略上的话，我们如何跟他和平的共处，所以呢以解除他对于美国带来的危机威胁，所以在这个时候呢是有这一种的思想的。
And these were led by people like Cap Weinberger, Richard V. Allen, and what they said is that we have to have a strategy to take on this radical element in the Soviet Union, that the Russian people are good people, but we have to take on this radical element in the Soviet Union that's trying to make the Soviet Union a military power to the detriment of their people and potentially confront and attack the United States.
那么还有呢，就是当时呢，也有一些的战略家呢，他们就说，是的，我们必须要是认识清楚呢，这个的苏联对美国带来的危机，我们可以一方面的话呢，跟他谈到和平这个的停战还有是各种各样的共处的一些的战略。当然，同时我们还得要是彻底的认识到呢，其实苏联在武器上那么样的针对着美国的话呢，对美国是带来一种的危机的。我们应该是在两方面都要呢是有清楚的了解，来到呢进行一些的战略上的部署。
And it got the attention, this committee, by talking about the Soviet strengths and what could be done to combat this, got the attention of a former two-term governor of California who had run for president already and lost. So he was back at his ranch, semi-retired, and this committee, the Committee on the Present Danger, got the attention, and that individual was Ronald Reagan.
然后呢，这个的当时呢，当委会呢，就是因为提出了很多这样的一个的针对于这个的这个的苏联当时如何是跟他们并存，但是必须要重视他们带来的危机这样的一种的战略的时候呢，那么他们引起了这个的加州一位的州长的一个的注意。那么这位州长呢，其实已经是竞选了2次那一个的州长，那么然后呢，他已经是半退休的回到自己农场的这个的状态下的一个的里根先生，他当时就认识到这一个的当委会，而且也认识到他的战略，就觉得是非常重要。
Caspar Weinberger, Richard V. Allen, and William Casey are just 3 of the, Gene Kirkpatrick, 4 of the prominent leaders of this group became his Secretary of Defense, his National Security Advisor, his head of Central Intelligence, and ambassador to the United Nations. It was the core of the Reagan team. Much of the thinking led to Reagan's victory in 1980 in the calling of the Soviet Union the evil empire.
然后呢，在80年代的时候，当委会里面的3位的重要的这个的主席还有是副主席还有是一个的军事呢顾问呢，就是 Weinberger、Allen 跟 Casey 呢，他们也就是成为里根先生当选了总统以后，他的内阁里面的3个重要的官员，分别就是担任了这个的国防部部长，以及是国家安全部的这个的顾问，以及是这个的中央这个的参谋长，以及是呢他们是联合国的大使。所以呢，这个当委会在里根总统的时候呢，是发挥了非常的最重要的一个战略上的一个意义的。
The ideas generated by the Committee on the Present Danger were the backbone of President Reagan's confrontation with the Soviet Union and the destruction of the Soviet Union 8 years later.
所以的话呢，当委会当时在里根总统的时候呢，就是发挥着重要的一个的力量，他也就是里根总统当时面对这个的苏联的整个的战略的主要的建成的一个的原则，而且呢，也就是最后呢，帮助里根总统在里根总统的这个的时候，把苏联解体一个的非常重要的战略上的一个的结构。
With the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Committee on the Present Danger entered American history as one of the most important institutions in the United States about thinking about what are dangers to the world.
同时呢，它也是呢非常的重要的另外一个的意义呢，就是把这个的柏林围墙呢也是倒下呢，它也是发挥着一个的非常重要的力量。所以呢，我们这个当委会其实是说，美国在认识到任何对美国发生一个的威胁的时候， 他探索这一种的威胁，以及是来到呢在这个种的威胁下呢，构成一个的战略呢，是一个的非常重要的一个的力量，而且是一个的重要的机制。
In the early 2000s, after 9/11 and the attack by the radical Islamic Jihad, as represented by Osama bin Laden, the committee reformed.
那么，然后在2000年呢，美国在911受到这个的伊斯兰的这个的一些的恐怖的攻击的之后呢，我们这个的党委会也就是重新的在冒起来到重组，而且来到呢认识当时的对美国发生的一些的威胁。
And what the committee said then is very important, that the West, in China and the West are not at war with Islam. They're not at war with the Muslim people.
那么当时呢，我们就是说是当时我们要认识，其实我们美国面对了什么样的危机？是中国呢，还是伊斯兰，还是怎么样？我们就是说，我们不是说要对任何的国家来到发出战争，只是要认识当时面对的是什么危机。
But that there is a strand of Islam, this radical Islamic jihad, that is a threat to the world.
但是我们不是说是要对伊斯兰国来到发动任何的战争，但是我们必须要是认识到呢，伊斯兰教当时那一些的极端的基哈对西方世界来说是存在了一些的威胁的。
And it has been very successful in kind of guiding overall guidance and to the fact of the Trump administration. One of the very first things that President Trump wanted to do was to basically destroy the physical caliphate of ISIS in the Middle East.
那么然后呢，所以他在这个的特朗普总统的这个的政权的时候呢，也是发生了重大的一个的影响力以及是力量，他是有着一个的带领。一个的指导性的一个的作用，它特别是重要呢，是在特朗普总统呢的指导之下，他是破坏了这个的整个的假伊斯兰国的那一些的力量，这一个的重要的一个的一个的机制。
So about 2 years ago, when I left the White House, I started to talk to people like Brian Kennedy and Frank Gaffney and others that I thought it was time that we needed some committee, some sort of institutional apparatus to start to warn the people, right? In a broad scope, right? Both economics, information warfare, potential military, intelligence, all of it, to warn the industrial democracies, Japan, people in the United States and Canada and Europe, of the, number one, the oppression of the people of China, right? The Chinese people, old 100 names. And also the radical nature of this cadre of President Xi and Wang Qishan and others, this radical cadre that controls China right now.
那么因此呢，2年前当我在白宫的时候，还在白宫的时候呢，我就觉得那是一个的非常合适的一个的时间，要呢重新恢复这一个的委员会。为什么呢？我们应该要认识得到呢，当时中国一个的极端的政权，一些的少数的一些的极端的这个的极权分子，比如说是习近平王岐山，他们在对于中国人民的压迫而且是在对世界其他国家发生的威胁呢，必须要是做出一些的这个的教导，以及是一些的信息上的一些的这个的切入的。比如说是呢，我们要告诉日本啊、美国呀、加拿大、欧洲啊这一些的国家，中国在那个的在各方面，比如说是经济上、信息上、军事上以及是情报上带来的一些的威胁。
People watching the broadcast today, this evening in China, should understand one thing. One of the principal reasons we're in this terrible mess is that the elites of the world, what I call the Party of Davos, the World Economic Forum in Davos, people in the City of London, the Wall Street of Europe, people at Wall Street, people in corporate America and also in these international corporations, many of these international organizations, They are literally in bed with and in business with the radical cadre of the CCP, and they're doing it because they're making lots of money.
那么其中一个呢，我们要告诉世界的呢，就是说是你知道世界上所有的这一些的精英分子啊，他们这一些的企业，比如说是达沃这个的世界经济大会上的各国的成员啊，还有就是说是伦敦啊华尔街啊，美国的这一些的超级的国际上的企业啊，这一些的各方面的这一些的企业经营人士，其实他们都是呢跟跟这个的中国共产党这些少数的极端的集权的人士是让他们权力不断的提升，因为呢他们也可以从中呢获得利益。我们要把这些的信息呢就是告诉大家的。
Where our Rule of Law Fund that we've started basically from November from the press conference is to principally focus on the oppression of the Chinese people, the lack of rule of law on the Chinese people, and how the radical cadre of the CCP have essentially enslaved the Chinese people, and that the rule of law is to both investigate, to tell the stories of, and to let the world know exactly what's going on with the oppression of the Chinese people, and eventually, hopefully, for whistleblowers and others to be able to get visas, a whole package focused on the enslavement of the Chinese people by this radical cadre. The Committee on the Present Danger is actually to take a different direction and to talk about the information warfare, the economic warfare, and really the buildup of the Chinese military, which threatens potentially war in the South China Sea, in the East China Sea, in the Korean Peninsula, on Taiwan, and maybe even potentially further enslavement of the people of Hong Kong.
那么呢，他呢是这个的党委委呢，他的角色呢是跟我们的这个法治基金呢是有点是很大的不同的，因为我们是在去年2018年11月后呢，我们建立我们这个的法治基金会。那么其实呢，基金会呢主要是来到呢，希望是更加的帮助我们中国的老百姓，他们的生活、他们的生命都被是这个的逼迫这个的迫害。那么中国的极端的政权的这一些的共产的集权分子，他们是让这个的中国的老百姓呢过着这个的奴隶一般的生活。所以我们是通过调查，让全世界的人更加的了解到呢，现在中国发生的一些的故事，他们中国老百姓面对的一些的迫害，让呢一些的这个的爆料的人士也可以获得一些的，如果是逃出来的话，可以呢获得他们的签证啊，各方面的这一些的帮助。那但是呢，一个的党委委呢，它主要是通过呢让世界知道，现在这一些的少数的这一些的极端的集权分子，通过这一些的信息啊，还有是军事啊，还有经济啊，这一个的战争，来到如何来到呢威胁着这个的南海、东海、北朝鲜、台湾以及是香港的他们这一些的情况的。
I was actually in Italy, as you know, Miles, last week when we had the initial launch, the official launch 2 weeks ago of the committee. I unfortunately was in Italy dealing with the CCP as President Xi came there to both announce a deal, or at least a memorandum of understanding, but more importantly about the Vatican, which we'll talk later in the show. But we're having the second committee meeting publicly this coming Tuesday in Washington, D.C. There'll be many prominent people going to talk at it. I will actually give also a presentation, and we will make sure that the presentation is broadcast on Guo Media live for the people in China to see.
那你也知道呢，其实，在上星期的时候其实呢，我们这个的党委委在2个星期前吧，那是党委委呢是有第一次他们的有召开他们的恢复的一个的报告会。那么当时我身在意大利，因为呢在那个的时候呢是习近平这个总统的这个的主席呢是访问这个的意大利梵蒂冈，他们要说很多的那个的梵蒂冈的基督教的一些的事情。那么这个事情我们稍后再谈吧。那么当时因为我身在意大利，所以呢也没有太多人是知道这个党委委的事情。 那么，但是呢，我可以告诉大家，是2星期后呢，我将会是在华盛顿首府再一次的我们这个当委会有一个的报告会。那么在当时呢，我也会在场，我也会做出这一个的演讲。我希望呢，可以也是同时在有一个的直播，可以在国媒体上呢，可以让大家看到我们这个的报道会的实况。
我觉得刚才半农先生这个他讲了很多，把这个当委会说得很清楚。现在我们看到了很多人啊，说是这个当委会是创始人呐、董事啊。这个上次我在直播中也谈到了说，我说当委会里边最重要的是秘密委员会，还有执行委员会，因为这里边很多成员，我和半农先生都是好朋友。昨天我们在这个新的喜马拉雅大使馆还见了最重要的当年。给这个里根总统建议的就是关键的人物我们开会，因为他是国家安全委员会成员，是不能暴露名字的。那么我们先说到这儿的时候，先问一下半农先生，这个机构里边的这个董事会和执行委员会、秘密委员会，他们都是什么样的角色？
Okay, Mr. Bannon, you have talked about a lot of history about the CPD. Now, but then I would like to specifically ask you about the function of the Privy Council, the Executive Council, and the board of the CPD. And because yesterday, in fact, we were having this meeting with some critical personnel who was actually in position when as the national security advisor at the time of the Reagan's regime in our new office in the Himalaya Embassy. Now, but the thing is that I want to actually talk about that. Can you tell us the function more specifically about the Privy Council, Executive Council, and the board?
So we have a committee, and then we have some, Privy Council, and we have an executive committee that's going to help make decisions. The central purpose of the Committee on the Present Danger is to do both research, to do analytics of exactly what's going on, to make sure that it's not caught up in the media of any kind of partisan, political aspects, and that we're able to put forward a true story of exactly what is going on. And so that's why if you look at the initial people on the committee, people like Gordon Chang, people like Bill Gertz, you have very prominent scholars and people who write books, people who do research, people who write magazine articles, some of the smartest writers and researchers on that. Then there's another layer of kind of management, which is Frank Gaffney, it's Brian Kennedy. I will have a role in that. One of the reasons I haven't stepped up and taken a bigger role is I have a big obligation right now to the Rule of Law Fund. There's so much in the Rule of Law Fund that needs to be done as far as looking and investigating the oppression of the Chinese people, of the little guy in China. And so as the Rule of Law Fund gets going and we start to get some momentum, I will start to take a bigger role also in the Committee on the Present Danger. But we've got a tremendous group, and the principal focus is to let the world know and also to engage that we have a radical cadre. You have a group of radicals running the CCP right now. That was never intended under Deng Xiaoping. It was never intended the way things were developing. We were growing together as a world in a win-win situation. That this radical cadre of the CCP, which is oppressing and enslaving the Chinese people, is also getting to be geopolitically expansionist and really coming up against Japan, in India, in the United States, and its other neighbors in East Asia. And clearly something is going to, happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And that's what the committee is the main purpose is to let the world know. To let the world know and to also hopefully take action to really stop this radical cadre from both further oppressing the Chinese people and from trying to right now, I think, cause much, much, much potential suffering throughout the world.
那么其实这个的 秘密委员会以及是这个的执行委员会呢，其实他们都是呢来到我们在我们党委会当中呢做决定的其中的一个的部分来的。那么，但是呢，我要强调一点呢，就是这个的党委会，它主要的功能是在于进行一些的研究，进行分析，为让大家呢是可以得到一个中立的立场的一些的真实的报道，不会呢受到任何的这个的党派的影响来到呢我们要报道一些的真实的故事，把一个的真相呢是让大家是知道现在呢我们面对的是什么样的紧急的危险。那么因为呢，比如说是我们当中呢是有比如说 Gordon Chang、Bilge， 还有一些的一个的学者，他们都是一些是在报章上呀，或者是在杂志上写文章的人，他们来到呢是进行一些的信息上的一个的研究。那么而且呢，但是主要呢来说，我们的管理层，我们的这个的行政呢，都是由这个的 Brian Kennedy 以及是 Frank Gaffner 呢这两位的主席以及是副主席来到是担任的。那么其实呢，我呢也是有参与在其中，但是现在我主要的任务是在建立我们的法治基金会，因为里面呢实在有很多的事情，我们必须要是来到呢建立还有是立案呢各方面的调查，它需要的时间很长。当然呢，在法治基金呢建立好了以后，那么我会用更加多的时间来到呢去管理以及是来到参与这一个的党委会的事情的。那么其实党委会我说明了，就是说因为现在我们知道呢是中国的集权的一些的集权分子，他们已经是违背了当时邓小平先生的所认为中国应该走的一个的路线，他们不断是在南海东海的地区是发展他们的军事的力量，威胁到日本一些的东亚地区这个的美国的地区，他们在未来的3到5年可能有更加多的这个的活动会在进行的，所以我们必须要是让大家认识到这一些的危险，我们这个是我们的目的。
我觉得班农先生刚才说的这些问题呢，都是很多人关心的咱们这个党委会现在的主席呢 ，Brian Kennedy 呢，我和在纽约，在DC 在过去的2年，跟班农先生还有我和他本人也见过几次面，我们深度的探讨过这个党委会的它的价值他最早要求和我们合作，他本人也是这个中国1949到2019的那个中国欠美国的那个国债的那个基金里边的一个实际操作人那么这个里面呢，还有一些很重要的朋友都是美国国家过去党委会的重要成员比如说这个我们不能说的名字的其中一个最重要的人士呢，他最近向美国政府提交了一系列的提案得到了积极的回应他当年就是给里根总统当面拿了一张纸他当时很年轻，他是一个金融家，他说苏联是我们的威胁，苏联没有那么可怕，说当时的苏联只有60个 billion600亿美元的 GDP， 但是它334个 billion 都被给花出去了，这个国家经济上是支持不了的，它还要大肆的发展导弹，所以我们要对它要进行一系列措施把它给灭了。当时里根总统就说，你说的具体细节我不懂，我相信你，你去做吧。这个人就是当年灭掉前苏联共产党的这个机制的最关键人物。我们多次跟他开会，昨天跟他一起开会，他最近又给总统提了一个建议这个总统的建议其中就包括党委会，当然他自己有他自己的机构，这个机构他就是向佛罗里达州还有向美国各个州的养老基金、教育基金提出绝对不允许投资中国，而且更重要的事情要对所有中国到中国共产党控制的国营企业，包括后边背景是共产党的私人企业在美国上市进行尽职调查和背景调查，否则不行。而且要在美国立法行政马上立法停止所有这些退休基金、保险基金、军人基金的对这些人的投资，而且马上得到佛罗里达州的回应和国会45个议员的回应，然后可能在1个月内即将立法这是个很大的事情今天我说的多，要算翻译奶奶，可能是因为她昨天都参与了，所以都记得，你翻译一下吧，谢谢。
fact, that the chairman of the CPD, Brian Kennedy, I have met with him together with Mr. Bannon for the last couple of years, and respectively in New York and DC. We explore the value of reviving of the CPD. And in fact, that Brian Kennedy was also a critical person that in the bond issuing of China from 1949 until 2019. So anyway, and then another critical person that who was involved with CPD was a person that we had met with the last couple, yesterday and previously. I understand that this person was critical person to bring down the Soviet Union during the regime of President Reagan, because you see, he at the time was very young and was a financier, and he was working in Wall Street, and he observed that at the time the Soviet Union's GDP income the annual income was $60 billion, and yet their expenditure was 34 billion, so they were at the brink of the bankruptcy. And so that he also observed that, you know, the thing is that they were not able to really doing all this, and yet that they were focusing on the missile development. So therefore that it was a very good opportunity, and there was this window of opportunity to actually bring down the entire Soviet Union armed force. And the history proven that he was correct, and it was realized, and he's a critical instrument behind that. And recently, he also presented with the president these documents about the Florida he also presented with the Florida's governors about the pension scheme, and then also the education scheme that the U.S. And pension fund invested in the Chinese listing companies in the U.S., and then they were actually not having been investigated sufficiently, and they have no due diligence done for it, and so he had present document into how to rectify this situation, and also that proceed towards legislation about how that they need to be done with a due diligence to prevent also all kind of a pension fund and education fund of the United States invested into these companies. And then also this kind of a project is going to be expanded towards nationally, so that in the future that we are going to see a lot of such things happening, and then to preventing the pension fund and the education fund, a lot of these are major funds investing into these Chinese corporates.
This is Miles brings up a very, very, very important point, and let me just draft off that for a second. Is that first off, there are many, many people working with the committee today that we have not publicly announced, and over the next 6 months to a year, there'll be other people that we will add to the committee in a public way. Several of the people are really financial and economic experts. And this gets back to the original power of what the Committee on the Present Danger actually did, and what they did in coming into the Reagan administration. One of the central things that changed from the Reagan administration to previously is that a detailed economic analysis of the Soviet Union, and particularly the radical element that was running the Soviet Union, was done. And this individual and others came up with the fact that the Soviet economy was only half the size that people thought. And that meant that the defense expenditures took up such a huge percentage that the Soviet Union just couldn't keep going, and eventually would collapse from its economics. Remember, one of the most important things that President Reagan did is that really destroyed the Soviet Union without firing a shot. Mm-hmm.
就是呢，郭先生就提出了一个很重要的一点，就是其实我们这个的党委会呢，现在有很多的这个的成员的名单呢，其实我们还没有公布出来的。那么当然呢，未来的6到12个月，我们正式了把这一些的人呢，这个的正式的名单制定好了以后，我们将会是把这一些所有的成员的他的名字呢是公布出来，就是让大家是知道的，我们的党委会的成员是什么人的。那么当然。 是呢，主要现在是谈到一点的话呢，刚刚郭先生提到，就是说当时在里根政权的时候，我们是通过了一些的对于苏联的这个经济金融的一个的分析以及是研究，我们理解得到呢，其实它呢对于它的这个的国家的经济呢，其实没有那么人家想象那么大，其实可能只有一半那么多。那么而且同时呢，它也要集中在发展这个的核武呀，那么国防啊上根本是不可以呢入不敷支的。所以的话呢，因此在里根的时候呢，它不需要发出一个的导弹或者是发出一个的战争，它就已经是把这个的苏联呢是破解了。所以这个研究的力量以及是这一个的这个的信息的力量是非常的重要的。
And one of the central things of the Committee on the Present Danger about China is to have sophisticated individuals like this individual and others to be able to lead teams that will do a very detailed analysis of not just the CCP and this radical cadre that control the assets in China, but also actually who is working with them throughout the world. You know, how do they sustain power? Where do they get that power from and get that support from Wall Street? Where do they get it from the City of London? Where do they get it from Frankfurt, the capital markets there? And what corporations, international corporations, are supporting them? This entire analysis, and actually down to the pension funds and others that may be inadvertently supporting them. And so this is what is going to be a very important analysis. And I think it's very directly tied to what happened in the Soviet Union. There you had also a radical cadre that controlled place and tried to totally enrich themselves. And I think that's what we're seeing in China today, the self-enrichment of the CCP off the backs of the working class and middle class people in China. And that's one of the things that we're going to get to, that the committee is going to do some detailed financial and economic analysis of that and then promulgate that out to the world.
我们为什么要在此时此刻呢，来到呢重新的恢复，来到呢这个的党委会呢？是因为你知道，在那个的时候，在苏联的时候，就是我们对于他的这个的经济上的深刻的一个的分析以及是了解的话呢，让我们可以了解到如何可以解破这一个的政权，这一个的自私的政权，而且是自我来到呢这个的享受把他们自己个人的享受建基于一个的老百姓的这个的刻苦上，或者是他们的受苦上。那么所以的话呢，我们现在也看到中国是同样的一个的情况，我们必须要是了解，其实中国现在他们的这个的那么的强大。他们的金融，他们的这个的经济是如何可以得以是持续下去呢？他们的钱是来自于什么的地方呢？是否就是说是华尔街以及是伦敦或者是法兰克福这一些的西方的这个的金融的中心，他们通过了国际的财团，不断的来到呢是跟他们进行投资，不断的给他们提供这一些的这个的投资，使到他们的政权可以得以下去，让他们的这一些的极端这一个的少数极端的集权的领导，就是呢不断的可以了来到呢是享受啊享乐啊，但是就是把中国的老百姓继续的奴隶下去。那么而且呢就是说是在美国，我们自己的这一些的养老基金啊、教育基金啊，就不断的投资在这一些的国际的财团，也不断的投资给这个的中国的这一些的企业。那么我们必须要是了解到这其中的关系，是美国如何来到呢是帮助了这一些的这一个的少数的极端的集权人士来到发展他们的权利。所以呢，我们要进行更加多的这一方面的分析，以及是这个的研究。
非常非常的棒啊！班农先生说的非常非常棒。我过去的1周里面，我见了大概5个左右的跟这个当下委员会有关，或者和过去的党委会有关的一些重要人士。那么这些人呢，都是希望和我们法治基金来合作的。那么其中谈到了几个问题呢，都是很核心的，有些话我在这不能说。那么但是几个观点呢，他们都是认可的。比如说，当他们谈到说当年他们对前苏联起到作用的时候，我说现在你们应该更加的自信。当年前苏联它整个的通货膨胀 和经济的虚假经济性，和今天共产党绑架了中国的这个政权比，中国共产党现在做的恶和经济对的水分和虚假成分，和对人民的压迫的这个程度，是原来前苏联的都在100倍和1000倍。第二个，这是经济问题啊。第二个问题，那个时代是没有社交媒体的，没有社交媒体，只有美国可以给它抗衡。现在是有世界媒体的。我说我一点不谦虚说，那个时候中国没有一个郭文贵，也没有爆料革命。我现在还有个郭文贵，还有个爆料，我们还有法治基金。我那个时候的美国没有像班农先生这样的人，也没有几个像大家看到 Brian Kennedy 那样的人，还有我们认识的几个真正的天才级的政治家，真的没有。而且现在更重要的事情，美国还有一个川普总统，这样的总统，里根总统跟川普总统比，我认为川普总统对这个干掉中共更有利。还有一个副总统叫彭斯，更夸张的是还有一个庞迪奥，更夸张的事情，我说旁边还有江波的，还有皮万纳德罗纳瓦罗，还有赖埃泽，还有这些人。我说这些的本质和力量和集合加在一起，共产党不灭，我说那是绝不可能的。他犯下的罪行和虚假的经济，加上这些人，加上所以当委会我见这5个人，我说这是天意。
So that you see that very good, Mr. Bannon, that your clarification about the CPD. Now that in fact the last week that I have met with 5 critical personnel of involving with the CPD. And there are, of course, I cannot disclose their names, but the thing is that we all agree that that's something very critical, which is also very critical to the rule of foundation, is that you see that former Soviet Union, and they survived on the inflation, and then that they have cultivated the illusion on that economy, and then so that they exercise a lot of the oppression to the people. But then when we're looking at today's China, in fact, that the magnitude of what they have done in these respective areas were even surpassing of that of the Soviet Union. But the thing is that though, at the time, there was no social media in Soviet Union time, and so that is why that today we have social media. We have Miles Guo, and we have Mr. Bannon, and then we have this broadcasting. We have whistleblowers, and that can help us to do a lot of things in today's China. And also that we also have great politicians today. In comparison, I believe that President Trump's capability in today's dealing with China perhaps can surpass that of the time that of President Reagan as well. And not only that Mr. Trump, then he was aided with Vice President Mike Pence, and also that his cabinet, Mr. Pompeo, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Navarro, and Lighthizer, and all of these people get together, that we have prominent and intelligent politicians that we can aid us in our mission as well. So that is why that today it is a unforeseen opportunity for us.
我要跟你，我还给班农先生要说一件，我还没给他聊这个事情啊。我去加州这个地方，我这去年和前年去，几乎绝大多数是骂川普总统的，更是绝大多数是恨班农先生的。我这回所有见的人，包括政府的官员，包括这些财豪们，还有媒体大亨们，几乎绝大多数都改变了看法，对川普总统另眼相看，对这个班农先生现在都觉得是英雄了已经。这种改变不是你吹出来的，不是你宣传出来的，这是事实。所以说，我说班农先生他这个坚持是让我们太佩服的了。就是班农先生这种，这是我们最需要有的对理想的追求。你真的有这个 belief， 你真的有，让我感受颇深啊！你要翻译。你那个激情，咱们说好你要给来点激情吗？翻译奶奶。
I must tell you, Mr. Bannon. I must tell you, Mr. Bannon, that in the past 2 years ago, for example, that I went to visit California. I went to visit different states of those tycoons and business magnates and all those prominent people. A lot of them were telling me that, they don't like Mr. Trump, they oppose Mr. Trump, and they hated you, Mr. Bannon. But today, The thing is that when I go back and talk to these people, there's a 180 degree of a change of attitude. They all embrace Mr. Trump and then they love you, Mr. Bannon. The thing is that because they can feel that your persistence in your ideology and then your passion towards what you believe in, and so that is why that they feel that is why that they are showing such a kind of admiration and a kind of positive attitude towards you today.
Please.
Well, thank you. Listen, this is the great, struggle of our time. If we ever get to the point in the next couple of years of the freedom of the Chinese people, it will be one of the most important events in human history. The entrepreneurial spirit, the dynamism of the Chinese people is unlimited. And what I point to is in the United States of America, where the Chinese people that come to the United States have total freedom. And if you see how the Chinese people have thrived in the United States, whether it's in Silicon Valley, whether it's in Hollywood, whether it's in New York City, you see this thriving of the entrepreneurial spirit of the Chinese people. And so I think that, and one of the reasons I'm so focused on this, and I've made it an important part of my life's work, is that once we get the freedom of the Chinese people and have China integrate into the international system, the world is going to be not just a much better place, it's going to be a much more prosperous place. Mm-hmm. And I think that is why, President Trump, and people mocked and ridiculed President Trump when he first started this. People see that President China had to do. And that's why I was just proud to be a part of it from the beginning. But, we're in the very early stages of this. But this is why I think also, one of the beliefs for our audience in China, and this is one of the things that we're trying to make sure that Chinese people understand, in the United States, we just don't rely upon the government, right? The government is only a certain aspect of American life. The most important thing in American life is private life and your personal commitment to do things either in your business or in your civic life. And I think that's one of the reasons that the 7 million Chinese that are here have prospered so much, because they understand their endeavors in their business life, their endeavors in their personal life can have huge payback. And that's why both what Miles has committed and other Chinese Americans, other expatriate Chinese on the Rule of Law Fund is number one, and that's an outside independent organization made up of private people. We're taking private donations. Also, the Committee on the Present Danger. The Committee on Present Danger is also a private, non-government affiliated entity. But that's one of the great things about America, is that we empower people in these civic kind of societies, these civic institutions that can then go do great things. And so I think that it's good to know that the tycoons and the business magnates that mocked and ridiculed Trump and were not so fond of me a couple of years ago, by your endeavors of going around and talking to people, that you see that Trump is more highly thought of, which I think is true, and that maybe they don't quite hate me as much as they used to.
其实啊，你知道，我就是说是呢，我非常的关心是中国老百姓，他为什么呢？因为我是看到中国人民来到是美国，他们在一个的自由的一个的地方的话呢，他们是拥有了他们自己一个的创业家的精神，他们充满了这个的活力。所以呢，在美国这样的一个的自由的地方呢，他们都是能够繁荣，而且呢是可以生活的非常的好。他们可以在比如说是硅谷呀、荷里活呀、在纽约啊，不同的地方都可以就是生活的非常的这个的好，而且呢是可以获得繁荣啊，这样的。所以我非常喜欢这个的中国的老百姓，中国人，而且呢我也非常的关注，如果我认为是中国能够是解除了在这个的极端 端集权的这个少数的人的这个的压迫下的话，可以是走向是国际的体制的话呢，将是呢是为世界带来将会使到世界以及是它中国也变得是更加的美好的。所以呢，我知道呢，特朗普总统也是非常是关注于这个的中国共产党的这个的发展他的这一个的对于中国老百姓的一些的压迫的情况。所以的话呢，他也认为这个是非常的重要。所以的话呢，他也是这个的不断的坚持是在这一方面是处理这一些的问题的。那么而且的话呢，我知道其实你知道呢，就是说美国我们不会呢就是依赖我们的政府，政府只不过是我们生活的一部分而已。更对于美国人来说更加的重要呢，其实是我们的私人个人的这个的生活，我们个人呢在业务上呀，我们的个人的这一个的生活上呀，民间的生活呢，对于我来说呢，对于我们来说是更加的重要的。所以的话呢，我们必须要是让这个的有一个的法治基金，以及是我们的党委会，我们这两个呢，其实都是一些的民间的独立的私人的这一些的机构。我们这个的法治基金也是一个的民营的机构，我们也是可以接受是私人的独立的一些的捐款。当然那一个的党委会呢，也是非政府的，而且是独立的。我们希望是通过我们的研究，我们的这一些的那个的信息分析的话呢，做更加多的好的事情帮助这个的中国的这个的老百姓。那么我也很感谢是 Miles， 因为呢是他在不同的地方跟这一些的富人这一些的有财富有权利的人士不断的告诉他们其实我们有多好。那么让在他的游说之下呢，是他们改变了对于我们的一些的态度。那么他们更加的喜欢是特朗普总统，也是更加的喜欢我我非常的感谢他。
我们在关于今天党委会，我再谈最后一个观点这个过去的一周呢，我们和这些党委会最重要的秘密委员会和执行委员会的成员在见面当中包括昨天我和这个党委会的这个最重要的在1982年向美国政府提出的灭掉苏联的关键人士那么我和他们之间是目前是达不成默契的。有2个问题是绝对不能接受的我今天我还没有跟半头先生来讲这个问题，我一会儿要跟他还要讲这个节目做完以后，就是我从第一天我跟半头先生说，半头先生100%的接受和遵守了，而且做出了最好的榜样就是你现在西方对共产党的这个带来的威胁，你不能都认为是中国人的威胁，你必须把中国和中国人和中国共产党和中国盗国贼给分开。那么现在的党委会头2天的发布会当中，直接是对中国把所有中国人都包含在里面这是绝对不能接受的。这是我见过这5个人，我告诉他们，如果你想和我们法治基金合作，包括半头先生，我一会儿我会跟他很认真的谈这个问题严肃谈这个问题。你要得到我们的支持，我和你分享我们拥有的信息这一点我们证明给你们看了，我们有的没人有。郭文贵脑袋里这个地图能力和辨别能力和了解中共的能力，我相信没有第2个那么你想用我郭文贵的智慧和这个地图那么你想用我们的信息，你还想得到法治基金的所有的资金支持，必须要严正的严肃的正式的搞清楚。你绝对不可能把反中反华我不可能让中国老百姓卖牛的钱去捐给你，让你去反华去。不但不反华，你要支华挺华，这是前提。你可以反共，这是不可以的。所以昨天这个翻译奶奶你也都在场，我告诉他们的事情，你要是反华和反共不分开，或者说你不支持中国人，那这事咱都没得聊了。不，谁爱去掺和跟我们没关系这是前提的前提。我们越恨共产党，我们越爱中国人；我们越恨共产党，我们越觉得中国人越可爱；我们越恨共产党，我们越觉得中国和美国要友好，这是前提。所以这个问题我跟这5个人都见过以后，这5个人现在是4个100%说下一步他们会正式声明和支持，这是我们合作前提。现在半农先生不是这5个人之内的那么另外一个他说他在犹豫他说他在想办法说服。所以说这是一个核心问题，我可以半农先生谈
So that, the something that I have not even discussed with Mr. Bannon yet. You know, in the last few days, and I have met with these 5 people who are the members of the CPD. Now that, and then also I met with the Privy Council, Executive Council of the arms of the CCP, and I understand about their function, the purpose somewhat, and including the person who I met yesterday, who were critically instrumental to bring down the Soviet Union regime during the 1982 era. Now the thing is, what I understand at the moment, I must state it very clearly, that is a premise that I find it unacceptable about the CPD, is that they, at the moment, stating that they are anti-China. The thing is that, you see, Miles Guo, would never go against China, go against Chinese people, or opposing anything about the Chinese people representing. You see, the thing is that I find it completely unacceptable. We are talking about that the harm was done by the small number of the cadre of the CCP. It's not even about the CCP, it's not about China, it's about the small number of the radical cadre of the CCP. So we are we oppose those small number of the radical cadre. We will never talk about anti-China, opposing China. In fact, that we love the Chinese people. We love the Chinese people working together with the US people. We love that. And then so I must solemnly, officially state that I will never work with anybody who state that they are opposing China, anti-China, and our Rule of Law Foundation would never support anyone who have such a kind of a statement saying that they are anti-China, opposing China. So, and then I am very willing to share whatever information I have, and then I would like to share my wisdom together with the people and who are opposing the small radical cadre of the CCP, but will never work together or support anyone who are stating that they oppose or anti-China. And I believe that the 5 members I met with previously now became just 4, and they would actually release some official statement and stating their position in that regard.
What's your opinion, sir?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we're having the Tuesday meeting. People should understand, and particularly people that are watching this broadcast in China, about nomenclature. Oftentimes you see in nomenclature people say, oh, we're anti-China, or there are different organizations that are anti-China, or that the Trump administration and that President Trump is anti-China. That is just using a vernacular that's used as shorthand. What you see, and particularly in the Trump administration and the people that are focused on trying to rebalance this relationship, they have a great love for China and a great love for the Chinese people. As I've said before, I was very fortunate as a young boy, wanted to go to Asia, wanted to go to the Pacific, wanted to go to China. It's the reason I volunteered to become a naval officer. And as a naval officer, I volunteered to go to the Pacific Fleet. And in the Pacific Fleet, to go on a destroyer that was going to go in the 7th Fleet. The 7th Fleet is the fleet of the United States that patrols the Western Pacific. It patrols the South China Sea. It patrols the East China Sea. It's the fleet that goes in and out of Hong Kong. And that was the first time I was able to meet the Chinese people in Hong Kong when I went there. And I think it was in 1977 was my first trip. So I think, and if you look on the Committee on the Present Danger, these are people who have a great fondness for China, have a great fondness for the Chinese people. The situation we find ourselves in is, and there was no problem with Deng Xiaoping and all the growth that China did after the end of the Cultural Revolution, and particularly after the death of Mao Zedong, when China came out of this horrible period they had had during the Cultural Revolution. And so I think you'll find on the CPD, and we'll make sure the nomenclature gets changed, but people in the United States that are focused on what has to happen in China are focused maniacally on the CCP, and particularly what I call this radical cadre, and the radical cadre being personified by President Xi and really more by Wang Qishan. I mean, Wang Qishan is, as you know, Michael Bloomberg took him to Singapore and said he's the most powerful guy in the world. Wherever you look, he's all over the place. But that radical cadre is, quite frankly, the enemy. It's principally the enemy of the Chinese people. It's the enemy of what I call old 100 names, which is the terminology we use for the common man and woman in China. And so they are the enemy of the Chinese people, and quite frankly, I think the enemy of mankind. And as we'll talk more in the show later about the deal with the Vatican, what's happening with the Uyghurs, what's happened, and as you expose on our New Year's Eve, our Chinese New Year's Eve show, what they've done to the Dalai Lama. And there's just been some terrible news about the Dalai Lama over the last week in regards to the CCP. So people should understand if they ever hear the vernacular that these groups or that the Trump administration or the people in the Trump administration are anti-China, what the interpretation is they're the anti-CCP, and even not even the entire CCP, but the kind of this radical cadre of I think under 1,000 people who actually make the decisions and take all the wealth in China.
那么其实呢，我可以告诉大家呢，我们往往就是听到有美国的政府的人员啊，或者是特朗普的政府的人员呢，就说是反中国。其实我们没有人是真的反中国。其实我们呢，这个 anti-China 这个的反中国的这样的说法呢，只不过是地方上的一个的简称。当然，我们其实呢都是非常热爱是中国以及是中国的人民的。比如说是你看到长期来说，历史上来说，我们看到是中美两国的是充满了友好的关系。那么也对于中国的老百姓是非常的热爱。在邓小平的时候，远至于在毛泽东主席的时候，那么文革的时候。我们都是对中国呢充满了这个的热情以及是支持的。那么我个人就是特别的热爱这个的中国了。那么你看到我就是在年轻的时候，我参加了我这个的海军这个的第7舰队。那么然后的话呢，我在这个的队伍呢，海军的队伍呢，就是巡逻这个的西太平洋地区。那么是东海啊、南海啊，以及是这个的香港沿岸呢，都是充满了我们这个的踪影的。那么所以的话呢，我当时就是已经是非常热爱这个的中国，以及是热爱的中国的这个的老百姓，以及是它的文化。所以呢，我们其实现在我们说的这个的CPD 就是说是当委位呢，其实我们必须要就是说是通过更加多的了解，更加多的这个的信息啊、调查研究，我们希望是为国际上带来一个的平衡的一个的国际的关系，那么让大家是认识到，其实中国少数的极端的分子就是相等于我们说的习近平总理代表的这少数的权利。特别就是王岐山吧，因为你知道这个的王岐山呢，他是在布伦伯格的这个的在新加坡这个的经济大会上，被称为是世界上是最有权力的这个人。你看他这个是什么意思呢？那么其实我觉得他们根本就是不仅仅是我们的敌人，就是说是中国老百姓的敌人。所以的话，我们要是专注的来到了解这个的调查，他们是让大家都知道，其实他们是如何来到奴隶这个的中国，我们所说的白家老百姓。对他们的生活的影响。那么而且的话呢，我们也看到呢，其实他们的针对的对象也是包括了，比如说是这个的天主教徒呀、梵蒂冈呀、维吾尔族啊、少数民族啊，以及是达赖喇嘛。你看到在上星期也就是出现了这个的达赖喇嘛的一些的事情，我们可以在这边呢可以深入再谈一下。
先生谈的这些事情战友们大家都有很多澄清了。我们党委会还有个问题，刚才看到战友们在互动当中呢，就是刚才我看提出来，就是大家都是关心党委会的资金是怎么来的啊？党委会和这个现任政府会是什么关系？希望班农先生最简单的回答这个问题啊。
Responses, and then there were a lot of concern about the funding of the Committee of the Present Danger. I would like you to use the most simple terms to tell us that exactly where the funding of the CPD is from, and also what is its relationship with the present government regime.
Yeah, so it has no, the Committee on the Present Danger is a private entity. It's a not-for-profit. And so far it has no relationship. The predecessors, both the one in the 1950s, the one in the 1970s, the one in the early 2000s, never had any government assistance or government funds. You have people, prominent people, who have either been in government before or oftentimes go to government afterwards, particularly as they kind of lay out these programs. But it has no relationship. It's a totally private entity funded by private individuals. So far, we really haven't gone out and done any fundraising. Everybody's a total volunteer. The first events we've had, spaces essentially been given to us to have those spaces. We will start to raise money later this spring. But here's the thing about the Committee on the Present Danger. Things like this don't take an awful lot of money. The people that we have coming on board are experts in their own fields, and there will have to be some expenses that we'll have to put up, but this is not something that you have to raise a tremendous amount of money on, but it's a private enterprise, and people in our audience in China should know that, understand that when they hear something from the Committee on the Present Danger, understand it's a private institution, it's a kind of a collective, it's a committee, and it's made up of experts in various areas, but it has nothing to do and no relationship with government, with the government or government policy. Although we will definitely make recommendations about to the government and to Congress and to the president and to other people about recommended areas of where we think that the government ought to focus on its relationship with the CCP.
那么呢，我在这里要说明了，就是说是很感谢如哥给我这一个的机会啊。其实呢，我们这个单委会呢是一个独立、民间、私人、非政府、非盈利的一个的组织，一个的委员会。我们的成员呢都是各个领域的一些的专家，他们自愿的来到呢，是贡献他们的时间，来到呢参加我们这个的委员会，给我们提供各方面的意见的。我们现在呢并没有进行任何的募款的一个的活动，我们也没有任何的这个的资金。现在呢，其实说我们刚刚开的那个的发布会，那个的场地也是当地的人这个的免费的供我们使用的，我们的人也没有这个的工资，也没有任何的这个的经费的。那么当然，我们稍后的时候呢，在有需要的时候，我们可以进行一些的募款的活动，但是现在来说呢，是没有太多的这个的资金呢，没有进行任何的这个的募款。而且呢，我说了，因为呢里面的人都是自愿的，都是各方面的专家给我们进行研究，所以呢，当然就是除了他们一些的开支需要是报销以外，也不需要任何的什么太多的资金。所以的话呢，我们在这一方面呢还没有进行这一方面的活动啊。当然，我们也再说明一句的话，尽管是在1950年建立这个委员会的时候，又或者是在70年。2000年的时候，我们恢复这个的委员会的运作的时候呢，我们里面的成员也不是在政府里面担任任何的公职的，所以呢，我们这个的委员会跟政府是完全没有任何的关系的。那么当然呢，我们这个的委员会里面的成员可能是在从前他们是做过政府的官员，又或者是在之后可能会进入政府担任一些的公职，但是他们在我们的这个的委员会的时候呢，是跟政府没有任何的联系。当然，我们可能呢也会进行一些的政策上的研究，会给那个的政府提出一些的建议，给我们的总统呀、国会啊提出一些的建议，告诉他们，其实在现在这个的情况下，是跟中国的共产党或者是这一个的政权应该有的关系是如何处理，我们会提供一些的建议，但是我们并不是政府里面任何的这个的部门，也跟他们没有任何的关系。
好，我们今天党委会的事儿咱就不谈多了，因为还有很多问题，战友我们都看到了很多问题，那边也在整理，回头我们再说。我们现在谈第二个问题。
Matter of the Committee of Present Danger, then we are put a full stop here today because we have a lot of other matters that we need to discuss.
刚刚的很多战友，我看到这个留言啊，希望班农先生也是我们昨天准备好的啊。我说班农先生，我们谈谈中美贸易现在这个所谓的协议啊。刘鹤副总理又来美国了。昨天和这个美国总统在白宫又见面了啊，这回刘鹤先生换位置了，和川普总统平起平坐了啊，这个而且听说是中方的强烈要求啊，不能对面坐的像审判一样。然后川普总统也很高兴啊，谈得很好， 但是事实上也没有签协议，也没有公布在马拉格有再次的高峰会，也没有所谓的这个所谓在这莱特希泽莱海泽有个重大的公布也没有。事实上，就像我们当初说的，我说这就是个荒唐的笑话，对方在打拳。而且昨天我跟班农先生也说这个事情，我说核心的核心共产党王岐山给习近平建议说，现在川普总统完蛋了，马上穆勒调查就要出炉，川普总统得进监狱，要么被弹劾，全家都得完蛋而且一堆的问题，他家里问题一堆的问题，他们相信了相信就等着川普总统被抓、被弹劾、被完蛋，然后急着跟中共签个协议，所以拖，结果一拖了，穆勒调查出来他没事儿。结果傻眼了，赶快来了，这回是好了，什么都可以谈了，网络也可以谈，只对美国企业在中国开放网络可以局部开放一步一步来，其他都可以谈但是发生了一系列的事情，最终美国人还是没上当，这个太极打的美国还是很成功的。到目前为止，请班农先生谈谈中美贸易协议到底发生了什么，它接下来还会发生什么，大家很关心这个问题。
So, Mr. Bannon, a lot of people concerned about the U.S. Trade negotiation, this topic, right? Now, because that we see that Mr. Liu He came back to the White House yesterday, and then in fact that he was actually sitting together with Mr. Trump, and then in the White House, and it's not even opposing, sitting at the opposite position. It's not like that they are negotiating anymore. It's like a very friendly, everybody's talking, everybody's laughing, it's a very cordial atmosphere. Now, but the thing is that, but of course that we understand that it might be a ridiculous joke, because in the past that they were like stalling, because I understand that Chinese government, they had a lot of seemingly information that Mr. Trump would be impeached, and then a lot of trouble is going to be happening for him, for his family, then it's going to be the end of his government, his end of his re-election. So the thing is that they are stalling. But nothing happened, as we can see that from the Mueller's report, that it claimed that there is nothing happened, so that he's not going to be impeached, and so on and so forth. And so that China realized that, okay, so that they have to do something now, and that cannot be just stalling. And then so suddenly that they are talking about a lot of the areas in China is going to open for the U.S. corporate, and then cyber industry is going to be gradually open. But of course, we understand that is also the ploy of stalling, and Lighthizer is not going to be tricked. So can you actually tell us, in your opinion, what has happened in that negotiation and what is going to happen in the next?
Look, this negotiation is as important to the audience in China as it is to the audience in the United States and throughout the world. One of the reasons that you don't have rising wages in China and better, fairer, distribution of wealth and distribution of income is because of the way that the CCP, this radical cadre of the CCP, controls the means of production and really controls all assets. As you know from, and Miles, you know better than anybody, but if you're an entrepreneur in China, if you're a businessman in China, if you're someone in China, a worker that wants to have a stake in something, that wants to own something, the CCP can come in at any time and just say, hey, that's ours, and just take it back. One of the central things of what President Trump has been trying to do is to try to make sure that China starts to integrate into the world's system, into the world's economic system. You have to ask yourself a very simple question. Why are the Chinese people and Chinese Americans that literally come to the United States with nothing, right? With no assets, not speaking the language, not realizing and understanding the culture, in a place like the United States is very tough. The United States is a big country, and it's very go-getting and very tough. And for people that have been here for generations, how are the Chinese people so successful? How do they come here to a country where, their relatives or their families have been in China for millennia, for thousands of years, and they, in all likelihood, many cases, have not been able to accumulate any wealth, have not been able to accumulate any economic security, have not been able to put anything away for their families and for future generations, and haven't had anything to be able to pass down to future generations. And you have to ask yourself, when you see the Chinese here in America, they're among the most successful people we have. They're some of the best entrepreneurs. They've built some of the best companies. They've created a lot of wealth. They're now giving back to society. They're starting civic organizations. They're starting to become fully ingrained in American life. And why is that? It's one thing. It's freedom. The Chinese people, when they have freedom, and that is freedom of expression, freedom of thought, freedom of religion, when they have freedom, they prosper, right? And part of that freedom, a central part of that freedom is called property rights. And this is that when you own something, you actually own it. And when you own it, you can build it, you can grow it, you can sell it, you can finance around it, you can pass it to your children. You essentially can do anything you want with it because it's yours. And nobody can kind of come and take it from you. So let's do that and then we'll continue on.
Yeah.
那就是说是呢，这个是很对的。这个呢，我们也看到呢，其实现在在中国啊，它呢这个的中国共产党，他们对于整个的中国社会是极其的这个的来到管控的，所以的话呢，中国的这个的财富呢，也其实是掌握是在这个的中国共产党的手上。那么在中国如何他们建立一些的民间的企业啊，或者是任何的这一些的这个的企业也好，或者是财富也好，其实他们还是如果是中国共产党说我要把它拿走的，或者是把它夺取的，这个呢，其实在中国也是他们是可以做出这样的事情的。所以其实特朗普总统一向就是在说，他是希望是中国可以走向这个的世界的一个的体制，可以是跟这个的世界的国际的体制呢，可以是融合起来。这个的意思呢，就是等于说是让中国的社会是拥有一个的自由。那么，因为我们可以看到呢，中国啊，那么多千年来对于这个的中国老百姓的这一种的限制，这一种的压迫。没有这个的私人这个的产权他们来到美国了以后，他们尽管是在没有这个的财富，没有任何的资产，也不懂得当地的语言的情况下，在他们的努力、他们的活力，他们就是在这个的自由的空间，他们是活的这个的成功的。所以的话呢，尽管是在中国，他们并没有积累财富。在中国，他们不能够拥有任何的财产或者资产，可以让他们的下一代的儿女来到承继。但是来到了美国以后，他们在不断的努力，而且是他们在这个的自由的而且是产权受到保护的这一种的情况下呢，他们可以继续的这个的繁荣以及是获得成功。那么，所以我们说呢，是希望是中国也可以享有这样的社会，我们应该是让中国拥有这个的自由的发言权，自由的这个的言论，自由的思想以及是宗教，那么才让呢大家是可以在那一边是自由，而且是这个的繁荣，而且是得到成功，而且所以他们的所有的财产是获得保护。
And this is what President Trump's trying to do. This negotiation is much more than when you read about the press about just the United States selling more soybeans or more cattle or more raw materials to China. It's much deeper than that. It is about the structural changes to the Chinese economy that President Trump is trying to do. And those are about forced technology transfers, about intellectual property rights. It's about state-owned industries. But at the end of the day, what it is to have a more equitable system on both sides, not just for the West, but also for the Chinese people. One of the things that's going on in China that's very evident is that the radical cadre of the CCP, and you can tell with what they're trying to do with liberty, they have suppressed liberty, right? And in suppressing liberty, they've done it by suppressing the rights of the Chinese people. You are essentially economic slaves to their apparatus. And that is why, and one of the things I'm proudest of in Rule of Law Fund and the work that Miles Kwok has done, Miles has shown how the leaders, the radical leaders of the CCP, are not communists at all. right? In fact, they are what I call state capitalists. They take and extract as much money from the people of China, and what they do is they money launder it into the West. That's why there's so much real estate in New York City. The very city that we're sitting in today, you folks in China should understand, much of it is owned by the radical cadre of the CCP because they've laundered this money out. Miles's great investigation into HNA, shows you that they've taken a regional airlines that was owned by the people, partially owned by the people of Hanai, the region where the airline came from. And now that's $1 trillion company, we find out, as Miles was able to show, that 52% of it is owned by these private foundations controlled by Wan Xishan, right? And so you have to ask how that happens. And it just gets to be a money laundering situation where they extract wealth from China and they money launder it into the West so they can put money here because they're more comfortable that this is a safe economy and they can hide their money over here after essentially stealing it from the Chinese people. These negotiations, when you talk about the structural changes, and particularly the state-owned industries, is to make sure that you can actually, at the end of the day, unlock over the long term the economic value of China, but to have the ownership be with the Chinese people, not with the radical cadre of the CCP, so that Lady Liberty is not encompassed by a bunch of radical communists, but in fact is the Lady Statue of Liberty, the beautiful Statue of Liberty that we see right here in New York Harbor, a few miles from where the Guo Media Studios are in Midtown Manhattan.
中美谈判当中呢，我们涉及的这一个的问题呢是非常的重要的，就是说，其实我们希望不是说是中国像我们的这个的在像我们的农业买更加多的这个大豆，买更加多的这一个的牛肉啊、猪肉，我们其实希望的不是要看到这样的一个的谈判。特朗普总统呢，在早前呢已经是指出过了，他希望看到的是中国的经济是可以呢出现一个的结构性的根本上的一个的改变。为什么是这样的一个的意思呢？就是说是呢，当然我们也希望是在这个的技术的转移啊、信息的转移啊这一方面呢，是中国也可以做出一些的改变。但主要来说，他是希望是看到呢，是中美之间我们的贸易是更加的有一个的平衡的情况。更加的重要，他是希望是看到是中国自己国内的经济对于国民的财富的分配各方面呢，是让国家可以更加的公平。那么这个是什么意思呢？就是说，你看现在在中国是压迫老百姓的自由，也就是相等于他们夺去了中国老百姓在经济上的各种各样的权利，让中国的老百姓永远是成为这个的中国共产党少数集团集权极端人士的这个的奴隶。那么你看到呢，去年Miles 呢，郭先生呢，在展示出这通过他的很多的彻底的深入的调查，指出呢，这个的海航一个的地区上，海南地区的一个的老百姓拥有的一个的航空公司，竟然呢就是被这个的发展成为一个的国际的一个大的这个的财团，而且呢，当中是52%的这个的股权是由一些的私人是拥有在私人的手上，而且这一些的私人其实就是被这个的王岐山所控制的。那么其实他也就是等于指出呢，其实中国的少数的这一些共产党当中的集权的分子，他们并不是共产党员，也不是社会党员，他们其实是指一个的国家的资本的主义者，他们剥削了中国老百姓的财富，中饱他们自己的这个的钱包，把钱拿到美国纽约来到进行洗钱。为什么要拿到美国来呢？因为我们是自由的这个的金融市场，他们可以把财富呢通过种种的这一个的包装来到呢藏起来。那么所以的话，他们是从老百姓的手上是这个的夺去了他们的财富，来到呢去让他们自己拥有这个的个人的这一些的享受。那么所以呢，我们希望是不可以容许这样的情况，我们要进行调查，我们不可以让是中国老百姓的自由是那样的被夺去的。
刚才班农先生讲的这些事情呢，我不再重复，因为还要翻译什么的啊。我接下来讲一下这放在桌子上2个自由女神的雕像啊。这个雕像是大概在2003到2004年吧啊，这个是我设计的。这个就是送给美国自由女神的这个家族阿保伊底他们家做的，我设计的。他当时给我做完以后说，你设计的这个概念是什么？能不能告诉我？我放在了我的办公室，我说这个叫做共产党，这是毛主席语录啊，正在准备强奸西方的自由和法治系统。这是第一个啊，这是10几年前。你先翻译。
Mr. Bannon also mentioned about the Statue of Liberty, right? Now, in fact, that we see the 2 statues on the front, and they were actually designed by myself at the time 2003 to 2004. I told the maker of the Statue of Liberty, the family of that, the family of the maker, the Abilene, and then I told them about my idea of the creation of the design of this Statue of Liberty. But you see, the green one is basically signifying that China is raping the Western culture.
自由女神已经拿上毛主席语录了，这是第一个啊。这个是9年前我又让他做的。这个你看到后面啊，他有他家族的这个标志。自由女神就是美国自由女神，就是他送的啊，都有他家的标志。当这个在做的时候，当他知道我要干什么的时候，这个就不敢放了，这个就没有了。后面，这个呢，他说你告诉我你设计什么概念？他给我建造完以后，我说这个共产党已经强奸了西方自由，已经用红旗把你美国的宪法，你的宪法，这个是拿的是个美国宪法，当时立宪的已经把你的圣经给你毁了。当然，这个帽子现在因为在运输当中坏掉了。这个我说这是9年前，就这么快。
The first one, the green one, right? And I said that the idea is that China is going to rape the Western culture with the Chinese idea. That is why the Green Statue of Liberty was carrying the Chairman Mao's book. And then also at the back of that Statue of Liberty, we can see the stamp of the maker of the Statue of Liberty, the family of it, right? And then but then the second one that I actually made that 10 years ago. And at the time, I told them about my idea, and they dared not to put their family stamp at the back of the Statue of Liberty again because they were so scared of it. And that was the Statue of Liberty wearing the red flag of China, and then also that the flag is already covering up the Constitution, which was actually held in the Statue of Liberty's hand. That is to say that China has already successfully raped the culture of the U.S. and the Western, and so that is why that is all red now.
我还有一个3.7米的，全铜的，全实心的啊，设计的，手里边拿着一个什么，你知道吗？中国宪法一半，还有美国的这个立法一半。然后呢，2只脚穿着不同的鞋，一个是中国所谓长征的红鞋。另外一个鞋叫华尔街的鞋，手里边举着一个什么叫社会主义，脸长着一个谁呢？就是今天的王岐山的脸，那个非常的丰富啊，花了很多的钱。当我开始爆料的时候，他不送给我，现在还在法国。
And then you see that in fact, I have another statue, which was a life-size statue, in fact larger than life. It's 3.7 meter high, and then it's made with bronze, and that was still not being delivered to me because you see the design of it is quite very interesting, and in fact I think it's full of dynamics. And you see the holding in the hand of the Statue of Liberty was not the Constitution of the U.S. Instead, it's a Chinese Constitution. And half of it is a U.S. legislation. the acts of it. And then also that on the feet of the Statue of Liberty, one shoe was the red shoe, which was worn by the people when they were having the Long March in China. And the other foot was wearing the Wall Street, shoe. And then the face of it, the face of that Statue of Liberty was actually the face of Wang Qishan. And so you see, that was, I thought that was a great idea of the design, but then you see the thing is that they were still holding my statue and they would not deliver it to me.
我现在给您说的是中美贸易。我在几天前，我见了这个在加州，因为我要出席做一个秘密的听证，我不能讲的啊。他们起诉了很多我们大家都想知道的人，接下来会知道发生了什么。我去出这听证会之前，美国的某官员让我在外面给我握手迎接我说：“感谢你，郭文贵先生啊，你知道这个故事了都。说这个你提前告诉了马阿拉戈的人要小心来自中国共产党的人。他说你看我们抓到了一个中国的可能女间谍，要对川普总统要下手。他说他们一个共产党，他们太 low 了，太土了，他怎么那么愚蠢呢？我说所有你美国的问题和中共共产党的问题，原因就是你太高了。”他们太 low 了，你想啥问题你都很高，要有法律，要有道德，要尊信仰，要有人权，你所有都在想共产党是这样子的，而恰恰的你就是你的问题来自于忒高了。还有他惊讶，几个人给我握手，给我拥抱，他说你这话说太好了。我昨天你也亲自见，我给班农先生还给咱们党委会的最牛的人说，我说美国所有思考问题就是太高了。川普总统很多人骂他说是怎么样，川普总统思考问题也是太高了，啊，所以共产党是流氓，他是强奸犯，他是犯罪集团。我在多年前就预测到了共产党是这个样子的，所以中美贸易的本质就是欺骗，所以美国一定要改。不能再用法治、信仰、标准、人权在看待共产党。后来你知道，班农先生问了我一句话，你翻译的。班农说：“是不是？那我们怎么办？我们是不是也要 too low 啊？”我说：“不，我们只有保持了我们 too high 一直很高，我们才能赢这个 too low。但是千万别降低，降低我们就输了啊，这是根本性的。所以你来翻译这。”
Negotiation between the China and U.S. trade. In fact, the crux of the problem is that there was something, the fundamental I need to share. But then before that, I have shared I would need to share this anecdote with the people. And that is like that, 2 days ago, last week I was in California, and I was supposed to be testifying for a prosecution occasion. I cannot disclose that. But the thing is that we know the following, there are a lot of the relevant Chinese people going to be prosecuted. But anyway, that at the entrance of that, there was this. The police and the agent, he was giving me, he shook my hand and gave me a hug. And he said, thank you for letting us know about this, the event in Mar-a-Lago, that we need to be paying attention to some of the assassins. So that is why that we were able to arrest these female assassins whose intention might be assassinating Mr. Trump or stealing a lot of the information. The thing is that he was saying that, he said to me that, the Chinese government and their idea is too low level than using the Chinese female assassin. And then so I said to him that, you know what, that is exactly the crux of the problem, and that is exactly the crux of the problem about this U.S.-China trade negotiation, is that U.S. people, U.S. politicians, U.S. government always thinking that, thinking in a too high level way, because we need to concern about the ethics, the morals, human rights, religions. We cannot affront any of these aspects, and then we need to be considerate of all of these issues. And that is why that whenever we think something, that we need to take a very high level away of thinking of things. But the thing is, the Chinese government, they don't have such concern at all. They can use as low as a trick, as the dirtiest of trick as possible. And that is why that they are really rapists. They are mafias. They are, in fact, the criminal organization. So we must not think of them in too high a level, because then we would never be able to do anything about them. So that we must understand that basically whatever they say is really a lie. They are creating a scam for us. So that is why that, and then when I said that to Mr. Bannon, then Mr. Bannon said, so what can we do? Should we become as lowly as them? Can we be as dirty as them? Then I say, no, of course not. We can never stoop so low. We must maintain our own dignity, and we must maintain our moral consideration. We must still maintain our respect on the human rights and all kinds of high ground. But we must understand how low they become, and so that we need to know our enemy.
So,
and this is why these are such great symbols, is that it is understanding that the CCP and the radical cadre of the CCP are exactly like Mussolini. They're exactly like the Soviet Union. They're exactly like Hitler and the Nazis. All of these, the ground of all of these, they're all criminal enterprises. They think like criminals. They move and they steal from the little person like criminals, right? They have a criminal mentality. And the issue, the problem, is that where you have the Statue of Liberty, which is a very powerful symbol for freedom, and has been a symbol given to us by the French government and by the French people to honor the 100th anniversary of our freedom, which we would not be free if it was not for the assistance of the French people at the time to help us break off from the British Empire, that we can lose all these freedoms, very quickly. And one of the reasons is that people who should know better in the United States and the West, the elites in our country, the Wall Street people, the people in the City of London, the corporations, the wealthy, the cultural elites that have been in business, the way that we see the rape of the Statue of Liberty is because, not simply because the CCP is a criminal organization and that the radical cadre of Wang Qishan and Xi are criminals and think like criminals and oppress their people, whether it's the Uyghurs or the Tibetan Buddhists or the underground Catholic Church or the evangelical Christians or just the common man, old 100 names in China, but that it's aided and abetted by the elites in the West. And that's what to me is unacceptable. And that's one of the reasons that, given my great love for the symbolism of the Statue of Liberty, that I've dedicated my life to make sure that this will never happen. And I agree that until Trump came along, the United States was really asleep to this issue of how far the radical cadre of the CCP had started taking control of really American industry in the economy of the United States, and made us essentially a tributary state to them. We were Jamestown to their Great Britain. President Trump has stopped this. That's why these negotiations are so important. That's why they're so meaningful. That's why I don't happen to think they're going to get concluded anytime soon. They may, but I think if you have to go out and really get them done to the execution way and to make sure that this never happens to the United States, it's going to take a while. But we'll see that all in the coming weeks, and I'm sure we'll be back reporting this on the show as we go along. One last thing I want to say about Mar-a-Lago. That we had a terrible incident in Mar-a-Lago this week. Miles is a member. He's one of the wealthy elites who's a member at Mar-a-Lago. We had a terrible incident down in Mar-a-Lago where a woman from China, actually got into Mar-a-Lago, and she had a number of sophisticated devices that may have been able to either mess up the communications down there or whatever. But it shows you once again how you've got to be completely vigilant on every step of this.
那么呢，其实我也知道他说的文贵说的很对啊，就是说是我们必须要是呢，真正的了解这个的中国共产党少数极端这个的人士，他们的本质是什么？其实他们就是像这个的墨索里尼啊，还有是前苏联啊， 或者是希特勒那个的纳粹啊，这一些的犯罪的这一些的集团一样，他们也就是充满着这样的一个的罪犯的这一种的这个的这一种的思想，他们就是想要夺取、偷取中国老百姓的一切，来到呢是让他们自己这个的可以拥有最好的这个的生活。那么，所以呢，我是那么的衷心的热爱着我们这一个的自由女神像，因为它就是象征着这个的自由。你知道，它是在我们100周年战胜这个的革命，战胜自由获得自由的时候呢，是法国政府是送给我们的一个的礼物。那么，因为我们的这个的革命成功呢，也是因为有获得这一个的法国的老百姓啊、法国的军队的帮助才可以胜利的。那么，所以的话，我们是那么的热爱这一个的自由的女神像，它就是代表着我们必须要是热爱这个的自由。但是你知道，现在我们这个的世界，华尔街的精英。伦敦的这个的城市的这一些的精英，以及是国际的财团的这一些的财富，以及是他们的精英，不断的来到帮助着这个的中国的少数的集权的分子，让他们不断的提升他们的财富，不断的压迫是中国的老百姓。他们压迫的不仅仅就是说是这一些的维吾尔啊，或者西装啊，就是说他们简直就是把这个的中国的各种各方面的自由都是压迫着，所以的话，我们并不能够继续的允许的下去。我们必须要呢是知道他们，这个的我们也知道这个的中国的政权不断的压迫着这个的基督教啊，还有是白家老百姓他们的生活，所以我们是不可以允许的。所以的话呢，大家也知道，在特朗普总统之前，美国沉睡了很长的时间，那么所以呢，美国根本不认识中国正在带来的威胁，只有是在特朗普的总统的时候，他再次的让我们醒过来了。所以呢，我们现在在中美的贸易的谈判是需要那么的冗长的时间，因为我们现在不是只是说是我们要多少的大豆，我们不需要只是要多少的这个的牛，我们希望的是可以看到中国的体制以及是中国的自由可以呢就是继续的发展，有一个的根本性的这个的体制上结构性的一个的改变。而且呢，再次的说到呢这个的好像是文贵所说的，有一个的女间谍啊进入这个的海湖山庄这个的 Mar-a-Lago， 那她手上是带着一些的精密的仪器啊，可能是想要是谈话我们对这个的技术啊，所以我们在这里必须要认清楚呢，我们现在面对的是一些的犯罪的分子使用的都是按照的手法。
这个刚才半农先生，接下来我说你不要，我跟半农都讲过，你不用翻译了，我就先再给战友们说一下啊。这个在几个月以前，大家记得去年在感恩节前啊，大家记住我还被曝光了，被那个一个什么 Daily Mail 报纸，我在那里。那么很多人都以为我去参加那个当成因为总统在白宫，因为政府被关门了，他没有回去感恩节晚宴，也邀请了我，还给了我最中间的桌子。那么第一这个夫人和他家人，川普总统的家人全都在。啊，都以为我去呢。我那时就在胖比士，我每天在马拉格，就在那个我去的头2天，啊，一个来自中国的20几岁的女孩子，通过一个老会员的保证，加入了马拉格俱乐部。从开始谈到担保，到填材料，到打款进去，25万美元，46分钟。当他们告诉我这个消息以后，我说这个人一是来对付川普总统和他家人的，2就是对付我郭文贵的，啊，你们要注意。另外一个，在短短的几个月，有几千个来自台湾、香港的所谓中国人要加入的马拉格俱乐部。我当时就告诉，严肃地告诉马拉格的保管人员，我说你们应该向 FBI 还有这个特勤局赶快报告，他们在对这里动手，你们绝对不能让他们接触到总统的卧室。因为总统的卧室和我们之间吃饭的地方公共设施就1.8米远，而且不要接触到川普总统的家人。然后我说，凡是中国共产党派来的人会怎么样，会怎么样，我专门给他们说了几个小时。在这个事之后，你们看到， 感恩节我没去，结果发现了一个杨丽女士去了，妈妈桑去了，带着一堆中国人，而且那个新加入的会员，从那天加入，每天午餐晚餐全在那吃，就等着我郭文贵来，就等着见川普总统家人呢。后来川普总统家人没被他们给陷害了，我也没去参加那个感恩节的那个晚餐啊，但是这件事情终究发生了。那么过去的这一星期，我飞了这几个州，我做了好几个秘密的听证和证人的这个手续。我去了 Santa Barbara， 我去了洛杉矶，然后我还去了另外一个地方不能说的，我还去了这个科罗拉州啊。然后我的飞机在阿尔卑斯山下这么转着飞过去，我觉得这美国人太了不起了。我也在那里去做了证，还见了很多秘密的战友。从这一系列的事情发生，包括我去作证，包括现在美国政府已经采取了一系列行动。亲爱的战友们，大家一定要记住，我们在不同的战线有不同的战友，而且我们这些战友很多都是非常成功，非常有钱，非常有影响力，非常有良知，而且非常爱中国和非常爱美国。这次让我感受太深刻了，就像某个机构说，郭先生，你知道这个银行账号原来多少钱？我说大概是7000多万美元。他说你知道现在多少钱？我说大概10亿美元。他不对，已经变成了37亿美元了。I told you before the story in the year。所以呢，整个我这次，我可以说我本来我留胡子，100天以内我不能刮胡子，按照中国习俗。还有我有3个愿望，我3个愿望不实现，我1年、10年我到死都不会刮胡子。但是真的是上天来帮我们，伟大的战友们太伟大了。仅仅的就这1周的时间，我3个愿望实现了2。剩下1个我相信很快也会实现，说我这刮胡子也很快了。那么另外一个，大家刚才一开始我说到的，对美国所有的金融机构、养老、退休保险基金要求立法，已经得到了佛罗里达州第1个回应，而且停止养老保险对中国所有来自国营企业、私人企业的投资，对过去已经投资的进行每个都要审核。然后现在国会2党的议员，参众两院45个议员全部正式回复现在是行政要立法，对所有的来自共产党的国有企业在美国的上市要尽职调查，而背景调查，然后要进行监督立法，而且背后还要声明欢迎所有的中国私人企业到美国上市，支持所有的中国好企业来美国上市，但坚决对共产党控制的企业进行尽职调查、背景调查。这是一个巨大的胜利。然后就党委会现在多个背后的机构都在跟我们合作，包括昨天包括前天都在跟我们谈一系列的具体的合作。再一个就是盗国贼海外的财富的调查，已经在一系列的程序之中。那么接下来就是中美贸易谈判，在过去的几个月，可以说美国政府最重要的提出了什么？中国必须开放互联网，中国必须停止对新疆人和西藏人的陷害，就是宗教迫害，宗教必须在法治的框架下自由，而且是符合国际惯例和国际法规。然后保护中国人权，保护中国私人企业财产不受侵犯。我觉得班农先生每天都在呼吁，真的像个从不停止的小蝴蝶一样，全世界的飞，在替着正义、法治在呼吁。那么法治基金在欧洲、在亚洲受到了高度的重视我现在也不能说，班农先生也知道，我们都知道，多国政府现在要和法治基金合作中国的老百姓未来到海外来得到西方政府和西方政府沟通，何来申诉冤屈，财产得到保护， 最好的唯一的代言人应该是法治基金，就像昨天这位美国的最牛的当年干掉苏联的关键人物一样。昨天也是我们的翻译奶奶给翻译的，他也是证人了，现在了不得了。我告诉他说，您一定要记住，法治基金不是我郭文贵的，是你们美国人的。Kyle Bass 是美国很有影响力的，人家说他是现代版的索罗斯啊，但是是一个更牛的索罗斯。班农先生就是今天的人家说世界共产党的杀手，2个主席都是你美国人啊当的董事啊，背后控制人也是你美国公司。我郭文贵就是个 donation， 而且现在法治基金的钱每3块钱有我2块钱，法治基金的总额里边我占70%，而且我接下来还要捐很多钱。我昨天跟班农先生讲了，我也给这个朋友说了，前几天我们有几个最大的 donation 正在谈的，基本要完成的20亿港币啊，一个家族捐款，还有一个是1亿美元，还有一个3亿美元的，还有一个美国的银行家啊，科罗拉州的也是3亿美元要捐款。这些捐款一旦公布以后，我告诉所有的美国朋友，这些都是支持法治基金未来在美国在西方的世界能替中国人民伸冤，能替中国人们追回他们失去的财产啊，能帮助中国西藏和新疆少数民族被欺压的人得到申诉法律的支持和国家支持。班农先生还正在寻求得到欧洲等各个国家得到政治庇护签证以及其他方面的各方面的支持和法治基金的合作。所以战友们，现在从中美贸易谈判的本质的后面，我们看到了这个质的改变是什么？从美国当初要解决中美贸易的这个这个顺差问题，和美国人这个知识产权的问题，到了整个现在的要求互联网必须打开，宗教要得到保护，人权要得到保护，私人财产要得到保护，然后中国要真正的结构改革。说白了，结果就是你共产党不能一党独大，不能搞假人大、假人权。所有的中国人在危险之中，美国人是绝对不同意的啊。那么综上所讲，班农先生现在看到对外所有的讲，你们没有看到他背后每天在做什么事情。昨天是富士电视台采访啊，我们现在在喜马拉雅大使馆啊，全曼哈顿唯一一个防弹的独立式的办公楼。现在我们这上面是大挑空，这个设计师是最伟大的设计师之一，这是个全新的楼，法治基金就在这个楼里面，这叫喜马拉雅大使馆。我正在买资产，在华盛顿，在加州，我们要建喜马拉雅啊，我们的大使馆啊，领事馆和我们战友相聚的地方。就是共产党灭亡的日子可以屈指可数，不是存不存在，可不可能，它是一定就是时间的问题，它一定的被灭掉。再一个，我们一定要记住，坚决不被少数人利用啊，反华反中，这是太王八蛋的主意了，这是最坏的主意。一定要更多的让中国年轻人得到西方的教育和支持，然后让私人企业家在西方更加被信任。我们要灭的就是共产党的极少数人绑架了共产党，99.99%的共产党都是好人。亲爱的战友们，我们永远不要失去我们的大方向。喜马拉雅就是让中国人有法治，真正的法治，独立的法治，独立于行政之外的法治，让中国人有宗教的信仰的自由，依法信教，政钱分离，这个钱教分离，钱和教分离，创造一个正道的美好的中国的生态社会，然后让中国人民成为世界上最受人欢迎、最受人信任的一个和平的民族，把我们中国的文化当中最好的一部分展现给世界。我这回在加州很多地方，包括很多照片，大家都没注意到，很多房子都是1亿5千万美元、2千万美元，我们开会和见人的地方，没有一家里边没有不包含中国文化的。 啊，这些很多人都爱中国，爱中国人，爱中国食品，爱中国文化，啊，其中有一个要支持法治基金的女士，她是过去的一个18岁当空姐，后来嫁了一个老板，到最后自己成了现在是100亿富豪。她自己设计的房子值几千万美元，漂亮的不可形容，家里边都是中国的文化。她说她过去最恨半农先生，最不喜欢。I told you, the hurt is before hate you, behind you, now I love you 。她原来说一提半农就火，现在爱半农了 ，love 半农了。她说为什么呢？她觉得半农先生讲的对，她经常旅游，经常去中国，她看到了中国、西藏、新疆少数民族老百姓被迫害。给我拥抱说，郭先生，我能不能 kiss 你一下子？我说你 kiss 2下都行，只要你捐钱啊，给法治基金多捐点，开玩笑。他说我爱中国，我爱中国人，中国人太好了，太勤劳了，中国人真的没有野心。他说但是共产党太坏了，啊，一个完全以独立的美国真是大富豪。过去恨半农，现在爱半农先生，到现在爱中国爱到了不能自拔，但是恨共产党，这就是大势所趋，啊，这就是我文贵说的半农先生的价值，啊，刚才我讲这些呢，你不用翻译了，因为半农先生都知道了，但是你给把后边这一段你可以给他翻译一下，然后最后呢，我们这个半农先生说，我们今天直播时间很长了，我们后边的问题都今天说不完了，但是把刚才给简单半农说一下，让半农先生做一个总结，说今天我们剩下问题不谈了，一定为中国争取中国的互联网必须开放，我们要为此来努力。第二，要保护中国新疆、西藏的宗教自由，让中国实现真正的法治中国，干掉共产党，这是绝对没有问题的。然后半农先生会为法治基金很多战友们来争取更多的自由和被保护的机会。还有，我要告诉战友们，所有捐款的，不管1美金、10美金，票据一定留着，未来你们会知道的。好，请简单翻译一下。
Because a lot of that actually that you have known before, but I'll just give you a drift, a little bit of a drift of what he said at the last. It's just that you know that we've talked about that the China-U.S. negotiation, and then it takes a long time. But then the thing is that there are a lot of the talk about that the pension fund and all those are going to actually not invested in the Chinese SOEs, but that we welcome the private enterprise of China coming, and because the people are diligent and the people are very passionate, and then they are very good people, peace-loving people, and a lot of the U.S. entrepreneurs and the magnates, and then in the past they dislike you, but now that they see that you are also very diligent, persistent in your passion, and then you love China, and then you're helping the people, and so that they have changed their attitude altogether, and then they are going to invest and donate, and hoping that to help Chinese people to build this a great ecosystem for the Chinese people to be free, and then also that they hope that the China, and that they definitely they need to open up the cyber systems, the cyber industry, the technology, and so that we need to able to manage the cyber control, the hacks and all that. And so that we also need to make sure that China to build this a free society and free country for the Uyghurs, for the Christians, for the Tibetans, and so that everybody can be protected, and so that we can thrive and prosper. And all the donation made to the Rule of Law Foundation definitely is going to have invoice, and so this is based, and then we are going to build the human-led embassy, not only in the US, but then also in California, in the DC, so we have a meeting place, and we have these focal locations, and then to help us to do that. And then we have a lot of people standing together with us in the US. We have different battleground, not just in China, and so therefore that we have a lot of battle lines and a lot of supporters. And these people, they don't like the CCP radical cadre, but they love China and they love Chinese people and they love the Chinese culture, and they're going to give us a lot of a donation, and then also they stand together with us. As I was just saying that, we have a lot of a donation in the Rule of Law Foundation, but my donations is accounted for 70% of the total donation, but at the same time that we are seeing a lot of the major donations happening. Some people from Hong Kong and then also from the US, 100 million and 300 million, and they are on the coming. So, but anyway, that we are going to see a lot of that, and then we are going to send out invoice for everyone to acknowledge and officiate all the donations. But we have very restricted of a time. In the interest of time, they said we ask you to wrap up and then to give us the final words about what's happening and what you're going to see, and a lot of the discussion can be carried out later on.
Well, as you know, we're in the middle of this intense negotiation led by President Trump. The trade deal is what everybody over here is talking about. We'll see how that plays out the next couple of weeks. I just got back from Italy, and we'll discuss this in more depth later. But this deal that the Vatican did with the CCP is absolutely unacceptable. There's now been a lot of anger about it in Rome and throughout the world as Catholics and Christians start to understand what the Vatican's done and cutting a deal, a secret deal, with the most radical elements of the CCP. That's Xi and Wang Qishan, which is this deal is unbelievable in the fact that it's been kept secret. We believe one of the reasons it's kept secret is because of the fact that it talks about a process of full diplomatic relationships between the Vatican and the CCP. And our point is that the CCP as a institution has promulgated forced abortions onto the Chinese people for many, many decades. And it's just, it's unacceptable that the church would then cut a deal. So we'll talk about that in the future. There's a lot going on. Rule of Law Foundation, we've got the Committee on the Present Danger in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill on Tuesday, and then a lot more going on with happening in Italy and Europe and Brazil. I'll be able to report next time we broadcast about President Bolsonaro in Brazil and what the CCP is trying to do down there. So this is a global battle, and we're going to be involved in it all over the world.
可以谈到很多是相关于是我在刚刚在意大利所目睹的一些的事情。我们也知道这个的中国的习近平也是去到梵蒂冈秘密的跟我们的中国的共产党有签订了一个的协议。其实这个是在罗马也招引了很多的这个的不满的情绪，而且呢是天主教徒呀、基督教徒呢，他们都觉得是被出卖了。那么所以呢，因为你知道梵蒂冈这个的天主教。 这样的秘密的来到签订一个的协议，而且呢是中国在过去那么多年强迫是中国的女性是这个的进行这个的计划的生育，那么所以的话呢所以是不这个是非法的堕胎，这个是不行的，也是不可以接受的。所以的话呢，这个稍后我们可以再谈到，而且呢就是说是我们稍后下来更加多的相关于是法治基金以及是党委会的一些的事情。 那么，而且呢，党委会是在华盛顿下周2将是有一个的发布会，请大家也是留意。我们稍后呢也会对于这个的意大利呀、欧洲呀、巴西呀，还有巴西的 Bolsonaro 的总统啊一些的发展啊一些的行动呢也会跟大家是报告的。因为你知道呢，是中国共产党在巴西呢也是进行了很多他们的一些的活动。那么所以呢，我们这个的战事啊是全球性的。这个下次的时候我们可以 I'd
just like to say that I hope that one day, Miles, that since the French people who helped the Americans attain their liberty in 1776 as our partner that helped us free ourselves from the British Empire, and then honored the United States with this magnificent statue that sits in New York Harbor, and Miles has seen it many times. It's awe-inspiring to see the Statue of Liberty in the harbor with her torch. That I would hope one day that the United States, on the 100th anniversary of the freedom of the Chinese people, that we would be able to donate a statue, the Statue of Liberty, to the Chinese people to commemorate the 100 years of their freedom.
那我们再重回到看这个的自由女神像，你知道呢，它的意义就是说是呢，我们获得了法国的帮助，使到呢我们在1776年的时候可以就是脱离这英帝国的这个的统治，可以获得一个的自由，是成为一个的独立之国。那么然后呢，在法国呢，就是在我们100周年的时候呢，就是把一个自由女神像是送给我们，她持着她这个的自由女神是手上是掌握着这一个的自由的火炬，照亮了我们整个的纽约的港口。那我希望呢是在我们如果是战胜了这个的共产党以后，把它呢这个推下台以后，我们100年的时候，100周年的时候，我们也可以把这个的自由女神像也送给呢中国，象征着它也可以获得自由的100周年啊！这个是我想说的话，谢谢您。
非常感谢班农先生刚才这个建议。我们也希望的是啊，实际上这个厂家曾经给我有一个承诺，我在这不能说。我们未来的自由女神肯定跟这不一样，长得脸不一样，但是一定自由女神会光临中国啊！但是一定要刻上班农先生的名字，还有战友的名字，包括可能你好好工作，还有川姨奶奶的翻译奶奶的这个名字啊，一定会是一个更加完美的，因为它是个新时代的。
Suggestion. I hope that we can see a new Statue of Liberty coming to China, but of course that is a different look of a Statue of Liberty and a different kind of a design, but then definitely we will have your name engraved on it, and then also all of our warriors' names and
hair, Bandung hair.
So thank you very much.
然后呢，我们后面要说了呢，说完以后就我们要为大家还是再次要祈祷。那么我想告诉大家的，班农先生接下来会有很多事情都在做，关于法治基金，法治基金一定要记住是班农先生一个主席，凯尔巴斯是主席，过两天凯尔巴斯又来给我们开会来了。现在一系列的行动都在进行中，还要看结果，大家看结果。法治基金是美国的注册公司，是一个不盈利的公司，是为中国人争取独立的法治自由。依法治国和信仰自由的这么一个基金，那么接下来会有很多行动，请战友们永远不要忘了，法治基金是大家的，是我们中国人在西方代表了中国人民意志的一个家。
And then I must also say this to everyone that Mr. Bannon is going to be doing a lot of things, and he's going to be so busy because he is responsible for a lot of the events of the Rule of Law Foundation. And then since he is a chairman of the Rule of Law Foundation, and another is that Mr. Kalbaza, although that he's not with us in this meeting, there are a lot of things going to happen, and the Rule of Law Foundation belongs to the United States and the people of the United States. It representing a lot of the freedom and then also the justice and the liberty the United States fight for the Chinese people, and it is a non-profit, independent, private entity. And then the thing is that they are fighting for the freedom and the religious freedom and the liberty of the Chinese people. Thank you.
这个办公楼呢，因为班农先生就在这个楼上3楼，凯尔维斯在这个5楼啊，这个都是法治基金的办公室。4月底到5月份。会邀请很多战友，包括战友社交媒体的直播的战友们陆续到这儿来哈，你们搞直播啊。然后呢，班农先生也会接受你们采访。接下来我们稍微公布细节。
And in fact, Mr. Bannon's office is located on the 3rd floor of this Himalaya Embassy building. And Kalba's office is located on the 5th floor of this building. And at the end of April, perhaps in May, we're going to invite a lot of our allies and our warrior friends coming to visit our Himalaya Embassy, and perhaps to have a broadcasting event in here, and Mr. Bannon would be able to receive some of the interviews at the time. And so, but a lot of the details could be published later on.
最后我还说一下，为什么叫 Embassy？ 我是在班农先生那学的，他在华盛顿的一个独立的，也是一个 townhouse 啊，他的原来是 Butler Bar。我去那里的时候，我说这就是 Butler Bar Embassy， 我说为什么 Butler Bar Embassy？ 他说我要告诉华盛顿，我们和你们不一样，我们是外来的，我们要独立于你们，因为太政治化了。所以我们是喜马拉雅， 我们是外来的，但是叫 embassy， 未来就建立我们中国的喜马拉雅式的这个法治自由的国家。这是来自于班农先生，这是抄的他的。
Allow me to give you a little bit of details about why we named this building the Himalaya Embassy. In fact, that's a lesson taken from Mr. Bannon. You see that when I visited Mr. Bannon in Washington, D.C., and his office actually located in a townhouse, and the building is called Breitbart Embassy. I said, why embassy? Because it signifies that we are different from the government, and we are foreign. We enter into this soil, but we are independent. So that is why that is embassy. So I hope that we in the future, we're creating the city of Himalayas. And then we are foreign in the city, but that we independent, but we are part of it.
好，我们现在给所有的战友一起为中国14亿中国人民来祈福，希望他们尽快的摆脱共产党的统治，为美国人民摆脱中国共产党的经济侵略和西方世界和中国有更和平的未来，为大家祈福。
The 1.4 billion Chinese people, that they can actually get away from the oppressive ruling of the radical cadre of CCP, and also that we pray that the US and Western countries can also get out of the radical cadre's shadow.阿弥陀佛，谢谢了战友们，谢谢班农先生的到来，非常感谢，非常感谢。
Next time, Miles.
每次跟班农先生这个拥抱，我都很兴奋啊！他有一个最笑容的、天真的孩童的脸，这是他身上最好的东西。
Every time that I give Mr. Bannon a hug and kisses, I was very excited because that you see that you have such a childlike and innocent face. That is very sort of like make me feel that very much the best.
我们都相信我们是有使命的。
And I believe that we both have the mission from God.
如果没有使命感，不相信神的话，我们都是神经病了，都是不会干这种事情啊。
And then I don't think that we will have our sanity if we don't believe in this mission from God and our cause in our life.
上次直播的时候呢，我们在新办公室，就这个地方，第一次新的直播团队新的什么都是新的，班农先生也不在，所以上一次直播是最烂的一次直播。那么今天呢，经过了团队这也是临时的啊，未来这个直播间是全部是机器人自动控制的，24小时的。然后未来希望战友们到这来直播，跟班农先生开个杯子，很多法治基金见面。这个地方是所有的战友们在美国，在这个纽约的家是大家的。
So that in fact the last time we had this broadcasting, and that was temporary, and that was a brand new team, and so it was the worst of our experience. But of course, even today is still temporary because in the future, everything is going to be controlled by automatic robotics and intelligence, and then also that is going to be 24/7 with the broadcasting happening. And so I must say that in the future, this is going to be the home for all of our friends, allies, and when they are having a meeting in here, and when they're coming to see us. And so, thank you.
Thank you, sir. 再见。好，今天很成功啊，很成功。谢谢川姨奶奶，谢谢川姨奶奶翻译的川姨。Look at this! Wow! Look at this! Andrew, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rosh.